unexplained event from when I was 13. Staying in this very small town with Dad. He was working there temporarily. One day we're exploring the downtown area. It's just a handful of streets. And it's a nice sunny day, but there's hardly any signs of life. Place is deserted almost. Feels like the fucking Twilight Zone. Anyway, Dad is in some shop buying a tie, and I'm bored, so I tell him I'm going outside. Between that tie shop and the next building was this narrow alley with a dumpster inside. I notice legs poking out from behind the dumpster. Think it's a hobo. But notice there are nice brown shoes on the guy's feet. And he seems to be wearing clean gray slacks. No way a hobo would wear that. My next thought is, oh cool, it's a dead body. Go over to peek behind the dumpster, expecting to see a guy stabbed to death or something. But I just see a guy who seems to be sleeping. His head is turned and resting on the dumpster like he's asleep. But I see his eyes are open. Instantly I realize the face doesn't look right. It looks basically like a dummy's face. At first, I'm thinking I'm looking at a life-size ventriloquist dummy. This thing was bigger than me, like a grown man's size. Its face looks like solid wood. I could tell it was wood because, even in the alley, the sun was really bright. But then I notice its hands. They look regular, like a real man's hands. Skin, fingernails, a little hair. And I think, what the fuck? And I look at the face again. The blank dummy eyes shift towards me. Fuck that. I nope the fuck out of that alley and run right into my dad. He asks what I was doing in there. I just say, nothing. And I ask if we can leave. And that's it. The only explanation I could think of was that it was a man wearing a mask, but the way the guy's head was leaning against the dumpster, I could see his jaw and neck, and I didn't see any seams or anything. And his eyes moved. Somewhere between 8 to 11 years old. Often had nightmares and a fear of the dark that made me flee to my parents' bedroom to sleep. One day, wake up in the middle of the night in my room. The room is covered in whispering faces on the walls. They're arranged neatly in rows and seem to blend with the wall in color. They look incredibly unnatural, like their flesh is mixed with the plaster walls. They all have expressions of horror or laughter, and the movements they make are unnatural, and seem to be that of a giver or receiver of pain. I can't make out their words. There are so many faces that the whispering becomes ear-splitting, and yet still quiet. I'm dazed for a moment, and then I run screeching into my mom's bedroom, and I immediately curl under the covers. I never tell my parents about this. Nothing ever came of this. Any ideas on what it could mean? Be 16. Live with Dad. Just finished school and lounging around the house waiting to start college. Home alone one morning, and I hear the doorbell ring. Go answer it, and it's some dude who I've never seen before. Resembles Elliot from Breaking Bad, both in looks and clothing. Immediately struck by his friendly and upbeat demeanor, though. Oh, hey Anon. Your old man home? I'm Pat, his friend from work. Never seen or heard of this guy before, but he seems nice, and he knows my name and shit. Okay. Nah, man, he's not here at the moment. Okay. Any chance I can come in and wait for him to get back? Just wanted to ask him if he would like to come fishing with me today. This dude doesn't look like someone who fishes, but I think nothing of it. He won't be home till, later this evening, man. You got his number or anything? I haven't, no. Can I get it, please? Give him Dad's number on a piece of paper. He takes it, looks at it for a while, and then looks up smiling at me and says, Thanks, Anon. You take care, son. Shakes my hand and just walks off. Tell Dad about it later. He's obviously puzzled as shit, and has no idea who that Elliot character could have been. Like I said earlier, I'd never once seen or heard of this fucking dude. He never calls Dad, and neither of us ever see him again. Who the fuck was that guy? B6. In my empty house with a friend. We go upstairs, him first. He gets to the top and turns right towards my room. He sees something and stops. He turns white, and he pisses himself. He comes running back down the stairs, slips, and slides down on his butt. Catches me halfway and we both slide down to the bottom. He lands on his feet and he starts running, screaming. He opens my front door and runs into the road, screaming, waving his arms at cars to stop. His dad almost runs him over, gets out of car and asks what's wrong. Kid claims my sister was upstairs wearing an old woman costume and that we had pranked him. Dad is furious, bans him from ever speaking to me again. Later that day, I knock on his door and I'm told to go away by the parents. Next day, I see him outside. He won't talk to me. I offer to fight him for not being my friend anymore because logic dictates that's the only option. Doesn't want to fight. Never spoke to me again. I lost a friend that day. No idea why. There was nobody in my house. It was just us two. He literally turned white like a sheet of paper. This didn't happen to me, but to my mom. Every time she told me this story, she had goosebumps. Be the late 50s in France. Mom is 12 or 13. She's in a girls' school for poor friends. It's like a day, like any other, mid-afternoon. Girls are attending history class. One of Mom's classmates is named Claudette. Claudette is not focused. Instead of listening, she speaks with other girls and laughs. Teacher tells her to calm down. Claudette doesn't care and keeps talking and laughing. Teacher yells and sends Claudette to the school principal. Claudette, reluctantly, gets up. She goes out of the room and slams the door shut. 3 seconds after she slammed the door. My mom really insisted that it happened like 3 seconds later. Not 30 seconds, not 10, just 3 seconds later. The whole class can hear the most horrific scream they ever heard coming from the hallway. A scream of sheer terror and intolerable pain. Teacher and all the girls are rushing out. Claudette is on her back in the hallway, just 6 feet from the classroom door, crying and screaming at the top of her lungs. Most of her clothes have been torn apart. Shirt, skirt, socks, and shoes, yes, even shoes, and some of her hair have been ripped off. She's covered in blood and has deep and large cuts on her face, along with her arms and legs, like 30 different cuts. Teacher's in panic mode, and her face is livid. She asks one of the students to run to the principal's office. Teacher tries to comfort Claudette. "What happened, sweetie? What happened?" Claudette is shaking, eyes wide open, in an obvious state of shock. All the students are crying. Claudette manages to mumble, It's invisible. I couldn't see it. It's still here. It's invisible." Principal and the other teachers arrive. They take Claudette out of the school. In the following days, Principal told everyone that Claudette was quote-unquote fine, and that she was just resting for a while. But nobody ever saw her again. Very soon it became official policy that no one was allowed to mention this story ever again. 40 years later, my mom still couldn't figure out how something could have done so much damage in only 3 seconds. She always said it was like she's been attacked by a wild animal while being caught in a tornado. I know there's a Filipino thread, so I may as well post here. Outside of the cities, people here treat superstition as a part of everyday life, with witch doctors, the legit ones anyway, on the same standing as actual medical practitioners, and encounters with quote-unquote monsters treated as a unfortunate but inevitable fact of life. Be 8-year-old Flip Friend, live in rural town at the foot of a mountain range, spanning the length of the island that we live on. Neighborhood where we live in is right next to the town center. Neighborhood is holding a basketball tournament in the street. It's like a mini fiesta with almost everyone turning out to watch it. Neighbor just gave birth and is staying behind to watch her infant son. Her house is basically a bamboo hut, raised on stilts with the space underneath, usually left open and used for storage. She heads to the bedroom to check in on her kid. She sees a long hairy arm poking through the floorboards. These huts usually only have a single layer of bamboo planks as flooring, and the arm is trying to reach the baby's crib. Neighbor screams. Everyone outside hears, and her husband and relatives rush towards the hut. The arm darts back under the floorboards, and several people see a large black dog bolt from under the hut. running out towards the town outskirts. It's a fucking aswang. The neighborhood cancels the basketball tournament and organizes an impromptu armed watch for the next 2 weeks, since aswangs are known to stick around and wait for the prey to become vulnerable. The police station just a few blocks away officially does not endorse superstition-induced hysteria, but quietly steps up a road patrol for the duration. This goes on until the neighborhood felt they discouraged the aswang from pursuing the kid. It's a bit anticlimactic, but the vast majority of these attacks end this way. For context, aswangs are similar to Native American skinwalkers, in that they are people who use black magic to shapeshift into monstrous versions of animals, like dogs, birds, and boars. By day, they're often described as old and wrinkled people living alone in isolated shacks in the jungle. At night, they take on the forms of black animals to hunt. They have a taste for offal like the livers of women and children, and are known to stalk chosen prey over a period of days or weeks. While they're more often than not loners who voluntarily turn into shapeshifting monsters, it's not unheard of for them to turn unknowing victims, usually strangers and drifters, into more aswangs, usually by offering a stranger food or drink laced with their saliva. If consumed, the victim will slowly gain an appetite for increasingly strange meats, until they lose control of themselves and consume human flesh, at which point they will now become a full-fledged aswang. The process can be reversed by a medicine man so long as the victim hasn't consumed human flesh. They've been around for a long time, with Pigafetta's official account during Magellan's arrival in the Philippines, recording an incident of an aswang stalking. Despite being described as stronger than normal men, they can be killed by mundane bullets and steel, in addition to charmed and blessed weaponry, though it's recommended that they be confronted when in their human form, as they lack their superhuman strength during the day. I don't browse X often, but I have some good stories to share with you. Tons of creepy stuff happens in the woods I live nearby. Story 1. B8. Exploring the woods alone with my dog one morning. Don't expect anybody to be back there, so dog is off leash and running around, sniffing and doing whatever dogs do. I'm just following trails set by other animals, using a stick to clear spider webs in my way, or suspicious-looking plants, stuff like that. A creepy feeling gnaws at me the deeper I go into the woods. Hear what faintly sounds like a human screaming in the distance. Dog perks up and looks at where the scream came from, too. It's coming from deep in the woods. I stand there, unsure what to do. Feeling overly confident, I decide to follow where the scream came from. First time I'm in the woods alone, too. Dog just went back to sniffing and running around. After what feels like half an hour, I come across stuff that humans obviously left. A couch sitting in the middle of nowhere. A broken bike hanging in a tree. Lots of beer bottles hanging around. Looks like some teen hideaway. Carefully walk around the beer bottles and avoid all the crud lying around. After I walk a decent distance past it, I hear a scream behind me, where I came from. Realize dog has been gone for a while. Too scared to call my dog's name to draw attention to me, so I just stand there awkwardly, looking for any signs of anything. Kind of crouch down and walk back. Still bright daylight, so I should be able to see anything off in the distance. 2 minutes later, I hear heavy breathing. It's getting closer, and fast. Start freaking the fuck out. Look around, swinging my stick like a maniac. Suddenly, dog jogs out of bush, then past me. Bloody murder, thought some madman was about to kill me. I scold the dog silently. Realize the dog shouldn't be going ahead of me. I run to grab the dog's collar and I put the leash on. Continue my ninja walk towards where I thought the scream came from. Didn't see or hear anything after, for what feels like an hour and a half of searching. Walk back home. Didn't tell my parents what I heard, because they would just freak out and not let me back out. Maybe a year after the last incident, so I'm 9-ish at the time. Riding bike in the woods with my friend. It's morning again. Friend is easily scared, thinks there's snakes around every corner, and poisonous spiders that will hunt him down alive, and etc. I calm him down and tell him I walked those trails 1,000 times. Probably actually like 10 times. And well, find some trail that I never followed before. Now the creepy feeling starting to build up is on the back of my neck. Ignore it. Keep going. I want to see where this trail goes. Friend complains that it's creepy, that the trees and plants are all dead, and etc. I tell him it's fucking fall. Of course the trees are going to have no leaves and look dead. Actually, fall only began. Trees are just now only turning orange and red, and most plants still have their leaves. I'm getting scared myself, but nothing's happened yet, and I do want to explore this new trail. Come across a cabin in the middle of a field of grass. Friend doesn't want to approach it, of course. I ignore him and walk boldly ahead. I actually knock on the door. Nobody answers. I push open the door, and I look back. Friend is gone. Hear a scream coming from the cabin. Run the fuck away. Look back. Cabin door closed while I was looking. Didn't find my friend until the next day at school. This time this story took place at night. I walk in the woods all the time with my dad. He loves nature. He wants to go out again tonight. Both of us bring a flashlight and my dog. Dad is holding the leash instead of letting the dog run around because he doesn't want to lose the dog and have to look for it in the night. He finds the teen hangout spot with the couch and the bike hanging in the tree. Just keeps walking past it casually. Dog is obviously freaking out though, whining, trying to pull Dad away. Dad and I keep looking around for whatever it could be that's freaking out the dog. Dog starts barking. We smack the dog to quiet it. And now, I can smell wood burning. Ask Dad if he smells it too. He nods, but we don't see any fire. Figure maybe someone's smoking or something, but it doesn't smell like that. Whatever. We keep walking cause there's no flame. I shine my flashlight around and see two glints appear midair off in the distance. Moved my flashlight back, and it disappeared, but the bush around it is moving. Pull my dad's arms and whisper what I saw. He shines his flashlight at where I was looking, but he doesn't see anything. Dog still refuses to calm down. Half an hour later, we hear what sounds like wolves or coyotes howling. Wolves and coyotes are rare around here, but they do exist here. That's enough for my dad. We walk back home. Dog starts pulling ahead with all of his might. Slips out of Dad's hand. Dad and I scream for his name. It's too late. He disappeared off in the darkness. We chase after him, calling his name. I look back behind me. I can see a dark shape disappear behind some tree in the moonlight. I just look forward and keep running. Dog actually ran all the way back home. By the way, this all took place in the early 90s. Sorry I didn't have a camera back then. Didn't go in the woods for a while. I sat around and played video games, ate, watched TV, typical AmeriFat stuff. Decided to go again one day, probably 11 at this point. I remembered that cabin in the woods. I asked my friend, a different friend, if he wants to check it out too. He brings his dog and I bring mine, walking to where I think the cabin is. It's after school, but we still have many hours of daylight left. We're just chatting away while our dogs chase and play with each other, running around sniffing and etc. Dogs disappear after a few minutes. We call their names and they come back, but then they jog away again, same direction. We follow, find a dead deer with an enormous gut because of all the maggots and juice in it, but the head is missing though. Poke it with a stick. Typical stuff kids do when they encounter death. Ignore it and just keep walking. Half an hour later, we find another dead one, and again the head is missing. Joke with my friend that deer skulls are used for dark magic. And finally, we find the cabin. We're staying off in the distance, but in clearing and in clear view of the cabin, debating if we should go check it out or not. After a few minutes, we see a window curtain move and a shape looking back at us. Friend sees it too. Definitely has a hairy as fuck mask. Actually, it looked like a deer's head. I didn't make the connection until a year later. We were stupid as fuck then. Doesn't look fully human. We stand there not knowing what to do. Figure in cabin moves the curtain back and disappears. 2 minutes later, another curtain opens, but this time it's upstairs. It's the same figure, and it's staring at us. We're getting nervous about what it's planning on doing, but we're too curious to leave. So we just stand there looking at each other for what feels like 10 minutes. Curtain closes, and figure disappears again. And now we're getting scared, wondering what it'll do next. We walk back in the woods and hide behind trees while watching the cabin. The cabin door opens. Same figure, hairy mask. It steps out on the porch looking for us. Starts walking towards us. Oh shit. We bolt for it back home. Later, a friend tells us we gotta go back out there again. I refuse to go back there without my dad. By now it's a monthish later, and we go back with friend's dad and my dad, so there's 4 of us. We left the dogs back home because we didn't want them to get hurt. Both dads bought a gun, and we lead them to the cabin, midday. Dad outright walks up to it, fuck everything else, knocks on the door. Nobody answers, so Dad starts to body slam the door. It opens. We all go in and search the whole cabin. Nobody's there. Find alcohol, food, gas, all necessities in a cabin. Dad debates burning down the cabin because nobody should be running around terrorizing little kids. Debates against it because, ultimately, we're little kids. He can't take our words that seriously. As we leave, I look back. It's fucking there. Curtain open, deer head, everything, and it's just staring at us. I pull Dad's arm and I just point, and now we all see it. Dad starts walking back to the cabin. Figure disappears quickly as it notices us walking back. Cabin door is locked this time. Dad curses and kicks it harder. Dad actually shoots the door handle in desperation. Still doesn't open. Fuck it. Dad breaks window and hops in. We all get in. Nothing out of place to be found. We can't all be imagining shit. And we surely didn't lock the door when we left. We leave. This time Dad decided we'll spend the night in the cabin at some point and find this fucker. I'm watching the cabin the whole time. Once again, the curtains open and the figure is standing there watching us. Still drives me nuts to this day that it can disappear and appear just like that. A year later, Dad still remembers his promise. Makes the preparation to spend a week in the cabin. Uses vacation time and everything. He's a determined fucker. Friend, his dad, and the 2 dogs are coming along too. We actually see the figure upstairs as we're walking towards it. We get to the cabin just before dark and knock on the door. Of course, we're ignored. Body slam time. Breaks open with less effort than last time, and we get in. We search the whole place, and of course, nobody's here. Set up camp with water, food, books, guns, and etc. We all slept together in the living room for protection. Dad decides him and friend's dad will take turns staying up. We didn't need to bring a lamp and oil, already was here. We light it and use it throughout the night. We told each other ghost stories and shit like that late into the night. Dog starts barking in the middle of the night. Wake up to find lamp burn out. In the moonlight, I could see a figure outside, looking in from the window. Freak the fuck out. Figure disappears under the window behind the wall. Both dads jolt awake and grabs his gun. Nobody else saw the figure, but this time we're more careful. And all of us shared the watch duty this time. Nothing happened for the rest of the night, but holy shit, I was still freaking out that it got so close without alerting us. Next day, we cooked our food and ate breakfast. Just pretty much a normal camping experience for the rest of the day. We stuck together close, though. Friend and I went exploring in the woods with my dog. I was entrusted with a gun. Dad and friend's dad kept the other dog. In hindsight, it was a stupid idea to let us back in the woods like that. If you fear for your child's safety so much that you have to give him a gun, just don't let him go. So, we're walking around following trails, just having fun. Dog is kept on the leash though, because in the back of the minds, we're both terrified. Maybe some 20 minutes later, after exploring, we find another dead deer, again without a head. Man, this is getting old, I recall my friend saying. For me, this was just more evidence that it is still around. We find some stream and throw rocks into it. I set down the gun against a tree, and friend lets go of the dog to let it run around as we relax and chat about girls. Eventually, we can't ignore the creepy feeling anymore. I get my gun, and we call the dog over. It doesn't come back. We nervously walk back to the cabin, still calling for the dog the whole time. Dad and friend's dad was sitting around in the living room, with their dog resting in between. When we get back, Dad asked if we found anything interesting. No, but now the dog went missing. He just froze up for a moment. I don't think he even breathed. Calmly got up and everybody went looking for my dog. He never came back. We kept looking around until just before dark. We went back in the cabin only to find everything thrashed. All of the water was gone. All of the gas was gone. All of the food and bullets were thrown around outside of the cabin and stomped into the dirt. The guns themselves were emptied of bullets, and our flashlights were destroyed. Bullets are useless. We don't have any food or water or any light. Fuck. We still had a handful of bullets, one gun, and one flashlight that we brought with us when we went looking for the dog. We decided to spend the night in the cabin instead of walking through the woods in the dark with barely any protection. Decided to huddle together again in the living room. This time, 2 out of 4 people are on watch duty at all time. Nobody slept well that night, so, really, all 4 of us were awake half of the time. Whenever someone had to use the bathroom, we took the dog and the flashlight with us. Late in the night, we could hear footsteps in the basement. Dog perked up its ears, and I woke up my friend. Dad grabbed his gun, and everyone just listened. Sounds like footsteps just walking around. This continues for maybe an hour before Dad decides to go check it out. None of us want him to go alone, so we all huddle around him as he holds the gun and slowly opens the door leading downstairs. Everybody get on the floor. Walk the dinosaur. Just kidding. By the time the door creaks open, the footsteps have stopped. Dad actually stands at top of the stairs for what feels like a minute before he took another step. He points down the gun, aiming just in case anything wants to jump. All of us step down after him and reach the bottom of the stairs. Flashlight searching the whole room. Basement is pretty empty. We checked everything. It's just not here. Impossible for it to pass us on the stairs. And yet suddenly, we hear footsteps upstairs. What the actual fuck? How does it keep disappearing and appearing like that? Dad runs upstairs in rage. We all follow after him, trying to stop him. We see the figure already outside, running away into the woods. Dad takes shots at it, and then tries to chase after it once the bullets are gone. This ain't happening, .jpg. Friend's dad, friend, and I all restrain my dad. Dad finally calms down half an hour later. Everyone stayed awake the rest of the night. When the sun was high enough, we all headed back home without further incidents. The next day, Dad and I came back to set the cabin on fire, so it had no place to live. Moved away a year later, but friend didn't. 3 years later, I called my friend just to get in touch because we haven't talked to each other in so long. Wasn't long before we started talking about our experience. Friend said he went back a few months ago after we moved away. Said the cabin was still burnt to the ground, but something's weird about the cabin. He hesitated to go further. Of course, I had to ask what was weird about it. Friend tried to avoid my questions, but I persisted. When he went back, the rubble from the cabin had been rearranged. It now formed a perfect circle of charred pieces around the perimeter of where the cabin stood. Nothing inside this circle except for one solitary thing. Sitting in the middle of the circle was a headless, almost completely decomposed body of an animal. Another deer? I asked my friend. No, he said. Your dog. How would you know that it was specifically OP's dog if the head was gone and it's completely decomposed? At that point, it just looks like a pile of flesh, doesn't it? Oh well, too spooky for me ending. We have a weird story in my family that's treated like a spooky bedtime story. I heard it from various aunts and uncles, but it supposedly happened to my grandma, and she actually acted like it was real. Grandma's brother married this lady who killed herself shortly after giving birth. Postpartum depression, I guess. Grandma's brother was devastated. Grandma comes over frequently to check on him and help him take care of the baby. Always leaves before nightfall. But one day she comes over a little late, and it gets dark early. She decides to spend the night there and head home in the morning. Grandma's brother says she can sleep on the bed, and he'll crash on the couch. But that's when he warns her. Apparently, every night he's been waking up and hearing his dead wife's voice. He never sees her, but he hears her over by the baby's cradle, like she's standing over it. He hears her, soothing the child, kind of shushing it and humming and whispering stuff. Grandma just assumes her brother is a little crazy with grief and tells him not to worry, and they both go to sleep. But then, in the middle of the night, Grandma wakes up. She hears something in the darkness. It's her dead sister-in-law's voice, whispering and humming. It's coming from the cradle. Grandma looks over but sees nothing. She lies there, frozen with fear, listening to her dead sister-in-law's voice until she passes out. That's really all there is. But like I said, my aunts and uncles treated it like a spooky bedtime story, so I figured that's all it was. Then, one day I brought it up to my grandma. She got really uncomfortable and told me that the story was true, but she didn't think it was right to talk about the dead. I never green texted a story before, but here goes. My mom's told it to me again and again. Be me, an infant. My crib is in the other room for my mother. Since I'm a stupid baby, I keep pulling my blanket over my head in a way where I nearly suffocate, and someone has to come pull it off. My mom is napping in the other room. Suddenly hears, Hey, wake up! And feels nudges on her shoulder until she gets full-on pushed. Wakes up, goes to check on me, and I'm doing the blanket thing again. Nobody was home that day, except for her and I. It's a nice story. Feels like someone's looking out for me. I vape a lot, and one night, when I was on the computer, something really fucking scary happened. Just typing this out gives me goosebumps and chills. I had sat there gaming and vaping away, and it was quite late, a few hours past midnight. I usually just blow the vape on the screen, or, just subconsciously breathe it out. Whatever. Anyway, for some reason I took a big hit, and I turned my head left, away from the screen, to blow out a big cloud. And there it was. As I blew the cloud, a fucking face and upper torso appeared in the cloud. I could make it out for a second or two as the cloud drifted into it. I didn't see any distinct features, but it was clearly the shape of a human standing there. I dropped out of my chair to the right onto the floor, and I cried and screamed in panic for some time. I don't know how long, but probably a few seconds. Nothing happened, though. Something had just stood there all night, watching me. It was real. God, I'm terrified right now just writing this. I've obviously moved away from that apartment since then. OP, think of this from the ghost's perspective. Be me, ghost, trying to get this guy's attention to get him to tell something to my family. I'm so nervous. I don't want to give him the wrong idea or wrong message. Okay, I'm about to speak. Guy turns around and blows his vape smoke at me and just stares at me, and then starts having an autistic attack. I felt so bad I would kill myself if I wasn't already dead. Try nofap. 2 days in. At night, start hearing rustling noises in my furniture. 3 days in. Start imagining terrifying images and faces I've never seen before. Rustling noises moved into my bed. Can feel bed move a little when noises happen. 4 days in. Jerk off. Noises stop. Scary faces in my brain also stop. Is my brain forcing me to masturbate, or am I being haunted by sex goblins? And poisonous spiders that will hunt him down alive, and etc. What a bitch. Shut up.